Okay, let's go. Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for being here today. On behalf of the team here in Navarra, Spain, in the Rural Development and Environment Department and in the wider government, I'd like to offer you a very warm welcome to this, the second LCA4 Regions Transnational Learning Journey. My name's David Rhymes. I'm a language training consultant here in Navarra, and I'll be moderating this event this morning and the session to be held tomorrow and on Thursday. Over the next 3 days, we'll be hearing from a number of experts in life cycle approaches, exploring ways of achieving resource efficiency. We'll be discovering new LCA tools, exchanging experiences about best practices, all the time continuing to work towards a single crucial aim, namely the better regional management of natural resources, adopting a holistic approach to the use of life cycle tools and methodologies. Today, our main focus will be the LCA4Regions project, and we'll be hearing first from Pablo Muñoz, the Environmental Director, and he's going to speak in Spanish, and then after that I'll give a brief translation of the talk. After that, we'll have an LCA4Regions overview from Sandra Ilia from the Government of Navarra, also the LCA4Regions project coordinator. Then the first of our experts, Fritz Balkau, will be talking about the LCA concept, introducing the idea of sustainable solutions. And then the Navarra overview and policy context from the Director General of Foreign Action here at the government, Michele Rujo, will be speaking. And then Deborah Paolini from ACR Plus will be talking about the regional analyses and the benchmarking that's been carried out. Okay, at that point, we'll take questions, which I'll talk about a little more in a moment. And then in the second half of the morning, we'll be hearing from an external ACA expert, Ramiz Salemdeeb, talking on the subject of resource efficiency. Okay, and after Rami's talk, there'll be time for a second question and answer session. And finally, we'll have a short poll to close proceedings. I should say as well, we're going to start with a poll in a moment, okay? Not just yet. First of all, there's a little bit of housekeeping that I want to do before we get started. First, on the topic of questions, we'll be taking questions in written form all through the morning, all through the session, and you can type questions into the chat box on the right of your screen, okay? And we have a team here behind the scenes dedicated to answering those questions. Some of them they'll answer in writing, and some of them they'll redirect to me so that I can address them orally directly to the panelists. Okay. Now, when you're making a question, it would help us enormously if you could address your questions to all panelists, but please say to whom the question is directed. Okay, so that will help the team to steer the question correctly. Okay. Also, if you ask a question and don't immediately receive a reply, don't worry. The team will continue to work after the session is finished, and they'll do what they can to catch up with all the questions. And if necessary, they'll contact you by email after the session's finished. Okay, so that's just about all. I wanted to say briefly too, of course, tomorrow's session, everybody's welcome. Sandra's provided registration information. We're going to be looking at good practices for resource efficiency, and on the final day we'll be making study visits, and the project lead will be Raul Salanueva, will be carrying out a peer review. Okay, so let's continue with the poll. Irene, hopefully on screen. Okay, as you can see, the question was, do you have knowledge about life cycle analysis methodologies? And we can see that, well, 9% at the moment, these figures are dynamic, but at the moment, 9% have no knowledge at all. So you're certainly in the right place. 18% have barely any knowledge. So again, lots to be learned. Many of you have a fair extent of knowledge, which is great. We hope to be able to extend that. And those, to a large extent, I'm imagining, are the experts, right? Okay. Good. And the second question, would you be interested in applying life cycle methodologies in projects, activities, or initiatives in which you work? And we have a resounding 100%, which is absolutely fantastic. Okay, great. Okay, without further ado, let's move on to the first speaker of the day. Just here to my left is Pablo Munoz, Director of the Environmental Department here at the Government of Navarra, and he's going to talk to us, give us a formal welcome, and speak a little about the policy context here in the region. Okay, Pablo.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, buenos días, Egunon. Hoy iniciamos en Navarra la segunda jornada de aprendizaje transnacional dentro del proyecto europeo Interreg Europe LCA4Regions, basada en el pilar temático sobre la aproximación de ciclo de vida en la eficiencia de los recursos y que se realizará en 3 sesiones online a lo largo de esta semana. Damos la bienvenida a los socios del proyecto, a los stakeholders asistentes y a todas las personas interesadas que se han conectado con este evento. El proyecto europeo LCA4Regions, cuyo eje es el impacto ambiental de un producto en todas las etapas de su vida, pone de relieve la importancia de esta herramienta en la economía circular y persigue el objetivo de alentar a las autoridades públicas a introducir la evaluación del ciclo de vida en sus políticas en un intento por fomentar el aprovechamiento de los recursos, la base de la economía circular. Por eso quiero reiterar que este proyecto tiene un gran interés para el Gobierno de Navarra y para el desarrollo de sus políticas públicas. Confiamos en el éxito de esta jornada y, por supuesto, del proyecto iniciado, que permitan elaborar unos adecuados planes de acción para todos los socios y que tengan su consolidación en las políticas públicas relacionadas.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Pablo, for that. As I said before, I'm going to give a brief translation. Today, we begin in Navarra, the second transnational learning event within the Interreg Europe LCA4Regions European project, based on the thematic pillar of the life cycle approach to resource efficiency, to be held across 3 online sessions throughout this week. We welcome project partners, attending stakeholders, and all interested individuals who've connected to this event. The European project LCA4Regions, whose access is the environmental impact of a product at all stages of its life, highlights the importance of this tool in the circular economy and pursues the objective of encouraging public authorities to introduce life cycle assessment into its policies in an attempt to promote the sustainable use of resources, which is the basis of the circular economy. For this reason, I would like to reiterate that this project is of great interest to the Government of Navarra and to the development of its public policies. We're confident in the success of this conference and, of course, in the project that is already underway, which will allow us to prepare tailored action plans for all partners and to see them consolidated in related public policies. Okay, so thank you very much, Pablo, again for that intervention. Okay, let's turn now to the second speaker on our agenda, Sandra Elia, the project coordinator here in Navarra. And Sandra is going to be speaking about the LCA4Regions project. Hi, Sandra, are you ready? Do you have your presentation ready?
Yes. Hi, everybody. Thank you, David.
You're welcome.
So I'm going to start my presentation. Yes, is there. Okay, perfect. So LCA4Region is an Interreg Europe project financed by the European Regional Development Fund. It started last August in 2019 and will finalize in July 2023. Currently, life cycle expertise resides mainly in the private sector, and many individuals' policies are implemented in isolation from others. LCA4Region will contribute to a more effective implementation of regional environmental policies by the application of life cycle methodologies. But what life cycle assessment means? So it is a technique or a tool to assess environmental impacts in all stages of a product life, from raw material extraction to waste management or treatment disposal. The project is focused on expanding the use of life cycle methods as a holistic approach when conceiving and implementing public policies, related all of them to the environment protection and resource efficiency. The use of these methods will reduce spillovers that generate negative economic and environmental impacts. The consortium is formed by 3 regions and 9 partners, represented by 3 authorities, regional authorities, Lozki region, Lombardy region, and Government of Navarre. An aggregation of municipalities, Simbal, a university, Kaunas University of Technology, 2 research institutes, Prajarvi Institute and National Institute of Chemistry, an industrial association, the Industrial Association of Navarra, and an advisory partner that is ACR+. The exchange of experience among partners and regional actors is at the core of the project. This is possible thanks to the transnational learning journeys. 7 transnational learning journeys will take place during the first phase of the project. The first one was last January on Lithuania, and now during this 3-day event will be our second journey. In this exchange of experience, one of the partners region hosts the others for thematic workshops, exchange of good practices, study visits, and peer reviews. Focus on one of the thematic pillars, this exchange of experience brings partners and stakeholders to share challenges, opportunities, and good practices to improve regional policy instrument. On this transnational learning journey, we will focus on resource efficiency, and during the next one, the thematic pillars will be waste and material flow, public procurement, training and capacity building, and last but not least, monitoring and evaluation. The main result of the project are the following. We have already elaborated several regional analyses, and later on, a benchmarking of them will be presented. The 7 transnational learning journeys I mentioned previously, and along 2 years, different good practices linked to the thematic pillar will be identified. So as a result, at least 2 good practices will be displayed on the project website each semester, and a good practice guide will be published in January 2022. A policy roadmap will be elaborated as a policy briefing, promoting a greater use of life cycle methods and helping policymakers to adopt sustainable decisions. And finally, 7 action plans will be the icing on the cake of the project, and we will have a year to monitor the implementation of those action plans during the last phase of the project. The engagement of stakeholders is a key aspect in the project. Their experience and knowledge on life cycle approaches, their contribution to the regional analysis, identification of good practices, and participation in regional workshops and transnational learning journeys will help with the design and elaboration of the regional action plans. Partners and stakeholders will play an essential role in this pioneer project. I invite you to follow us through our website, where you will find all the steps that we achieved during the project. And now I would like to present you our first video of the project. We were lucky to be selected in the shortlist of 30 stories to celebrate the special edition of the Interreg 30 Years Project Slam that was organized by Interreg and the European Commission. Thanks to them for the opportunity they gave us to be part in the video edition webinar, and to Interreg Europe for their advice on the video. But I want to especially thank Deborah Paulini, our communication manager, for her creativity and engagement with the project. Deborah's professionalism makes the difficult easy, and she has managed to transfer the message of the project very successfully to the general public. So now we can move on and watch the video she edited. So let me try if I can share it, please.
Modern society demands abundant resources, and the planet is struggling to keep up. The environmental degradation is a proof that the overexploitation of natural resources for economic growth needs to be reconsidered. What's the hidden story under the tip of the iceberg? Do you really know all the steps to get what surrounds you? Buddhism teaches that the law of cause and effect underlies the working of all phenomena. The gradual journey of the transformation of the matter is a fundamental concept for our project, and it is named life cycle. Life cycle instruments are able to assess environmental and social impacts of products, processes, or activities through the analysis of each stage, from raw material extraction to disposal or recovery. Regions would benefit from including life cycle thinking in their development strategies and policies. We aspire to be a pioneer project to make regions put sustainability and resource efficiency at the core of decision-making, thanks to life cycle methodologies. 9 organizations, 7 regions. An interregional learning journey in each region to exchange our experiences, case studies, and good practices on environmental protection and resource efficiency. For 7 action plans to improve 7 policy instruments. Whoever wants to be a leader must build bridges. We started exactly from there. This bridge allows cooperation, eliminates barriers, and builds green connections around Europe. Let's start creating present good causes for future good effects together.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you very much, Sandra, and also thank you very much, Deborah, for that lovely video, beautifully narrated, I must say. And some striking images. Right, let's turn now to our next speaker on the agenda, Fritz Balkau. Fritz is an independent international advisor on sustainable development solutions, covering sustainability policy, global production and consumption practices, enhanced resource efficiency, and risk reduction in society. He's also the author of the book Life Cycle Approaches to Sustainable Regional Development, and loves to define himself as a catalyst, like the substance that throughout a chemical change generates change. It gives me great pleasure to introduce the first of his talks, his talk today, which is a brief explanation of life cycle approaches and life cycle assessment. Okay, Fritz, are you there? Can you?
I am here. Can you hear me, David?
Yes, perfectly. Yeah, and you're ready to share?
Yes, ready to go. Thank you for that introduction. I think you've covered the ground very well. I don't need to say anything about myself now. You've covered it.
Excellent.
It's good to meet everyone else again. Visually, it would have been nice to meet in person, but this cannot be at the moment. So we share our experience virtually. I want to set the scene very briefly for what follows in this Transnational Learning Journey by covering just the introductory message again on life cycle methodologies, what it is and why it's important. It's very short. It's a follow-on to the message that we already heard in Kaunas for the first Transnational Learning Journey. And as I say, it should set the scene for the remaining presentations that come after. And let's see if I can share my screen. Okay, so we're going to briefly just cover again the ground of life cycle methodologies with some examples from the partner regions of what they've been doing. Next one, please. The content of the presentation to recall the key points in life cycle thinking, but also some of the applications. So next slide, please, Sandra. Hello, that's it. So these are the key points that we want to cover briefly. I just want to recall, we know most of this already, but it's nice to have it all together. Life cycle thinking process, we need to look at the entire life chain, what happens upstream and downstream, as we say it in the jargon. We also need to keep in mind sustainability objectives. Many of the efforts we've seen so far are fine, but they only deal with one sustainable development goal. In fact, we should always keep in mind that there are 17 sustainable development goals, and we need to keep in mind whatever we do, has an impact on all of the 17 goals. However much we might like to optimize one of them, there are impacts further along. Life cycle thinking involves an assessment of what the impacts are along the life chain. But it's important that we see assessment leading to policy and management action. Assessment is not just the accumulation of data. Assessment has to lead to some sort of action. This is called life cycle management, and it involves all of the stakeholders along the life chain. And let me just see whether we can move this along. I cannot. I'm very sorry, but my screen is completely jammed up. Okay, next slide, please, Sandra. Next slide also. I'm going to skip this one. Okay, let me just give you a quick illustration of life cycle thinking of what it actually involves. And I'm using the example of life cycle costing, which is costing of the inputs and outputs along the life chain. Traditional costing, no, let's go back to life cycle costing, please. Traditional life cycle costing considers only the initial purchase price. So if we buy a printer for our computer network, we just look at the initial purchase price and we base our decisions on that. This is the traditional way of doing things. The next step up, this next step forward, is to take into account the cost of operation. Ink cartridges are quite expensive. So once we take into account the operational cost, it changes perhaps our decision making of buying the printer. But finally, we also need to look at the external cost, which is what happens to the printer when after 2 or 3 years it breaks down and we throw it out. We need to take the cost of disposal into account as well. So life cycle costing is to take both the upstream and the actual and the future costs into account. Next slide, please. So it's an illustration of life cycle thinking. We just need to remind ourselves that most of our materials and waste and also operational activities have a life chain. There's upstream and downstream. This is an example of the food sector life chain. The important thing to remember here is that whenever we intervene at one of these points, it has an impact all the way along the life chain. So for example, in the food chain, if we decide we want to improve the packaging of food to reduce the environmental impact of packaging, it has an impact on the life of the food. No packaging means the food will spoil more quickly. So for the consumer, it has an impact also. So next slide, please. The Sustainable Development Goals. The next slide, please. What we call unwanted spillover effect. So if we intervene at one point in the life chain, it will actually have an impact somewhere else. And this is something that we don't often think about when we try to optimize in something that we have in front of us. But the spillover impacts are important. We need to keep it in mind. Next slide, please. So what we've done through the project is put the life cycle tools, the assessment tools and the management tools, the action tools all together into what we call a life cycle toolbox. And depending on what the problem is that we have in our region, what we want to do, we can select the appropriate tool from this box for the task that we have in mind. Let's go to the next slide to give an example of the use of this toolbox. Here we have an example from one of the regions that happens to be Navarre. And we see that there has been some use of the assessment tools. As I said earlier, assessment generates a lot of information. We have to convert this into action. And we use life cycle management tools to take some action. It could be through better design, it could be through more appropriate labeling, it could be through environmental product declarations, which is another form of eco-label. Carbon footprint reductions, there are 3 examples there of where the information from the life cycle assessment has led to intervention actions through reducing energy use, buying green energy, carbon offsets. So this is what we want to see, the assessment leading to direct action through the use of life cycle management tools. And some of the questions we will be asking is that the LCA that you've done in your region, how has it led to policy changes? What policy actions has it led to? Okay, next one, please. Here's an example of life cycle assessment to compare various options. This is a comparison of energy options, photovoltaic, renewable, solar power, wind power. And we can see that through a comparative life cycle assessment, we can compare the impacts that our various energy options will have on health, on climate, on materials, on land, on ecosystems. This is a very useful way of using LCA to decide on which regional development options we want to take up. Next one, please. This is something that I've just thrown in to illustrate that life cycle assessment is not just the materials flows. Social LCA is also starting to become much more used. This is an example of social life cycle assessment in the agroforestry sector in Germany. And it turns out that the study shows that forestry work is one of the most dangerous occupations in the resource sector. And the social LCA looks at a number of aspects, but particularly health and safety, working conditions, remuneration, and so forth. So social LCA, we'd like to see that more used, and as the project develops. Next slide. As an example, this is particularly helpful for regions to use materials flow analysis to understand where things start and where things go on a regional scale. This example is in the food sector, and if we look carefully at the diagram, it shows that most of the biomass that is generated in the region goes into animal feed. Only a small part goes into human food. So this has policy implications for resource and agricultural development in the region. This type of analysis can be very helpful in planning agricultural development. Next slide, please. Let's look very quickly at some life cycle management examples. I've mentioned eco labels, environmental product declarations, PEFs, and the European one. This is a very helpful way for us to identify sustainable products. By sustainable, that means also from an upstream and a downstream point of view. Next one, please. This is a good life cycle management example to look at resource efficient buildings. The building industry has identified the key sustainable development goals. You can see them in the little house there. It hasn't considered all of them. It's focused on the priority SDGs, and it's developed a range of activities to implement those sustainable development goals in the building sector. And you can see those as a series of key points on the left. Next one, please. One of the things that we should discuss in another forum, but it's becoming increasingly important as organisations, including municipalities and regions, develop or adopt long-term carbon abatement goals. And most of this is through impact offsetting. And here in particular, life cycle assessment, life cycle management is necessary to make sure that the offsetting isn't worse than the initial problem. And here are some points that need to be taken into account in carbon offsetting. We can discuss it a little bit later. Next slide, please. So the summary is quickly that life cycle thinking is important along the entire value chain, upstream and downstream. We need to keep in mind the sustainability agenda, not just one or two goals, but our impact on all of the goals. Life cycle management framework for decision making is better, and we use assessment to generate information and life cycle management to take action. Next slide, please. That's all I want to say at this stage as a lead into what I hope will be a very productive 3 days in this TLJ tour in Navarre. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. We're going to move now to the next item on the agenda. And this is the overview of the policy context here in Navarra. And our speaker now is Miquel Irujo, who's the Foreign Action Director General at the Government of Navarra. So I'll pass straight. I've been asked also to remind you that the chat is open for questions and that you can address your questions to all panelists, and please do indicate who the question is directed to. Okay, so Mikael, hello, good morning.
So hello, good morning, David, and good morning to everyone. It would have been perfect to have all of you here in Navarra, but well, circumstances are what they are, was not possible. So no, from my perspective, I will be brief because I believe that we are going into the schedule. So I will just draw a Navarra overview and the policy context also at the end, what we are doing in Navarra and how is our alignment with the Green Deal. It will be the conclusion of this, I insist, very short introduction. First of all, welcome to Navarra. We are 650,000 inhabitants region. We are located, as you see, in the Pyrenees, very close to the Atlantic. We do not have coast, though. We can see the sea, but no, we don't touch it. In terms of GDP, we can say we are one of the wealthiest regions over Spain. Very open economy. We need to say that our industrial sector is very wide. I mean, it represents almost 1/3 of the total economy, while the EU average is 16%. So the industry sector is very, very strong in our region. Regarding climate, you are not here, but I mean, I know there is this topic about the Spain, but here you don't see much the sun. We can say that it really rains a lot. Indeed, Navarra is divided in two different climates. We could talk about three. All the north part is pure Atlantic and is full of forests and really cloudy and rainy. But the south part is Mediterranean weather. So in a very small region, you can join, I mean, too many different climates. It makes also our region quite different and interesting from the climate point of view. So strategy. For us, the starting point again was in 2015. You know that European Union forced us to all the regions to draw on smart specialization strategies. All of us, all regions, we have been working in this because it was mandatory as regards the regulation of the structural funds of 2014. So smart specialization is a very good exercise, first of all, because it does include what they call entrepreneurial discovery process. This discovery process is much more than entrepreneurial because it covers everybody. It forced every single region to make a participatory process about the vision that everybody has about our region from now to the next 10, 20, and even 30 years. So this means that the vision is shared by everybody, but the so-called quadruple helix, so administration, research, education, industry, and civil society. And the smart specialization strategy gives to everybody this kind of fora to exchange all the views. For instance, we are now drafting our regional recovery plan to try to fix all the disasters caused by COVID-19. It has been made through the smart specialization. Why? Because everybody, more or less, all the stakeholders of Navarra are already participating in it. Why I do believe that this is very important, because of course, climate change, the vision of a sustainable territory was already settled in our smart specialization. This means that the smart specialization strategy, more or less, was the starting point of what we adopted in the 2017 as a government, who was the roadmap for the climate change. This roadmap has a budget of 220 million euros for the period 17-20. It has been, it's going to be renewed now. So it's a strong budget for a region as Navarra of 650,000 inhabitants, and it covers all the fields. It has really a holistic view. It covers policy in housing, in energy, in transportation, in innovation, and of course it has also this vision of going out, of being linked with the European and international networks. So this roadmap, I'd say it is following this inspiration coming from the smart specialization strategy, was taken and adopted through a very wide participatory process. It was more than 160 meetings were held all over the territory in order to get all the impressions and opinions. It was adopted, I insist, this budget of 220 million euros, including all the economic sectors. And once, I mean, we had adopted a strategy coordinated with everybody, because when we mean energy, we mean that the Department of Environment, it's coordinated with the department dealing with energy. You know, whoever has worked within governments, we all know that coordination is always a challenge, even internally. So the roadmap opened this way to coordination, and I think it was a consequence of that was that we got this live integrated project called NADAPTA. It's at the beginning, the 17 was one of the few integrated live projects focused only for adaptation measures. It covers different strategic areas, but the most important is that every single measure must be taken through a very coordinated way, not only within government, but also covering all the institutions of Navarra, municipalities, associations, and also even public societies and private sector. So NADAPTA is a consequence of this holistic vision and coordinated vision that we have established in Navarra since 2017. I wanted to show you also a regional law on waste and its taxation that it was adopted in the 18, also as a consequence of the roadmap. I think it's very important. It was at the moment, I mean, 2 years ago, when was also a pioneer in this kind of vision on taxation on waste. We all know now, I mean, last week, the Spanish government announced that they want to do the same for the whole state. And the European Union, as you know, it has as a proposal for the 21-27. I will skip this because we are running out of time. Also, part of this roadmap of climate change was the adoption of the agenda for circular economy in Navarra. It was done last year during the first trimester, and the agenda covers all the vision that you have there. I mean, it's waste management, prevention, resource efficiency, ecosystem resilience, and human well-being. So this agenda, it's being implemented now, and it is once again, it's within this vision that we have for Navarra from here to 2030 that was already adopted in our smart specialization strategies. It's like a summary, this slide about what I have been saying until this moment. And of course, we are doing this in order to be aligned with what the European Commission is now proposing within the Green Deal. As you know, I mean, of course, we all know European Commission proposed last December the Green Deal. And during the last months, it has been launching several different proposals, including Farm to the Fork was perhaps the last one, but of course the circular economy strategy and so on. So in many of the aspects, and especially right now that we are now debating in the regional parliament a new law on climate change and energy transition, we are having this vision to readapt our roadmap and our full strategy with the Green Deal Europe. So that was all from my side. I think I respected a little bit shorter than my 10 minutes. Thanks a lot for your attention, and I really hope to see you, all of you, someday here in Navarra physically. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Mika. Thank you for that. Yes, wonderful and bang on time. Yeah, excellent. Okay, let's move on. We have one more speaker before we take questions. Again, a reminder to keep your questions piling in. Okay. The next speaker is Deborah Paolini. Deborah, are you there? Yeah. Hello there. Hi. Okay, Deborah works as a project and communications assistant at ACR Plus, which is an international network of cities and regions based in Brussels, whose purpose is to promote circular economy and sustainable resource management at the local level. Okay, she takes care of communications and deliverables for the LCA4 region. Okay, today she's going to present for us the outcomes of the 7 regional analysis benchmarking, which performed previously. Okay, Deborah, you need to open your microphone. Deborah, microphone. Okay, hi, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect. Okay. Deborah, the floor is yours. Take it away.
Thank you, David, for this introduction. It's a pleasure being here. I'm here connected with my colleague Paolo, and we are partners of the project. As you perfectly introduced, we work for ACR Plus, which is an international network of cities and regions. So today we are gonna face outcomes of the regional analysis benchmark. So we're going to see the regional analysis, the proposal methodology of this benchmark, and the SWOT results. The overall objective of LCA4Regions is the lifecycle-based improvement of policy instruments related to the efficient use of natural resources in regions. And based on this objective, each project partner during the second semester delivered an analysis to communicate the state of the art of local policy making process that represents the basis for our exchange of experiences. And the regional analysis aims at presenting local and regional and national, when relevant, context analysis. So including some deficits, expectations in the policy making process. According to these pillars already mentioned, so resource efficiency, LCA in waste and material flows, training and capacity building, public procurement, and monitoring and evaluation. So each region identified the elements for a SWOT analysis and reporting at local level all the issues connected to LCA, and analyzed its policies to identify to what extent ACA is, lifecycle methodologies are considered, including their actual experiences in the use of LCA, and also mentioning the supporting environment for LCA studies in their regions. So the content of the analysis reflects the focus of ACA4Regions project, which is the action, so life cycle oriented action by regions, aim to build 7 action plans in the region. So the aim of this benchmark is to set a common baseline about the life cycle approaches existing within the project, highlighting opportunities, challenges for achieving the project goals, and allow the partners to proactively pursue these goals. So this benchmarking is meant to figure out what reasonable expectations and barriers are to be taken into consideration in order to meet these objectives. Here you can see the methodology. So basically, the benchmarking is meant to figure out this is the structure of the regional analysis. As you can see, each slice of the cake is a structure of this analysis. So production structure inside the region, economic and industrial sectors, so relevant life cycle methodologies potential in these sectors, regional policies and regulatory framework, and a special focus on LCA database and expertise in the region, as well as knowledge and awareness among relevant actors, and a final LCA toolbox that contains life cycle assessment and life cycle management tools inside the 7 regions. So here, just a quick example about one of the partner regions, which is Satakunta in Finland, to show how we analyzed, how the analysis has been carried out. We see the first step is collecting data, of course, so scanning the information and dividing them into separate SWOTs according to the structure I mentioned before. And when possible, identifying them dividing by pillar. Then we see here the focus on all the life cycle approaches situation. And here, basically, this phase is grouping and cross-reference the 7 SWOTs of the regions. And yeah, here you have the strengths, and then we did the same for the other elements like weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And the conclusions of the analysis are here in the final project SWOT that basically encompasses the most relevant points highlighted by the 7 regions. And so we got evidence of some general trends. We can zoom in this project SWOT and start to talk about the trends. I'm not going to go really into details, but basically in the trends we notice the presence of research institutions and universities related to LCA studies. We see a wide range of natural resources available that can represent a field where region can really preserve these resources, and the resources could be a strategic driver for the regions to promote the implementation of life cycle methodologies. We see the majority of the regions have a strong industrial sector, so the regions could guide actually the application of life cycle methods for the improvement of processes, for example, process design, optimization, and integration of these methodologies should be really spread by the regions in key industrial sectors, mobilizing local stakeholders around this objective. Then we see an active participation in circular economy projects, efficiency plans already implemented by some regions, and at least 3 regions claims to have an economic capacity for investment. So the issue here seems to be how to allocate funding on life cycle methodologies. 3 regions have their own legislative power, so this means that there is enough potential for the project to influence policymakers and inspire future action plans. And there are particular public procurement strategies, especially in Satakunta and Slovenia. Most of the regions is anyway committed to green procurement. So this is positive for the public procurement pillar. And 3 regions out of 7 claim to already on a regional level quite developed LCA methodologies theory. And there is a nice interest and awareness among actors. Switching to the weaknesses, the availability of data seems to be a general issue. So the consortium actually lends extreme difficulties to access to database of already present life cycle practices. And when they are present, they are not comprehensive. And in some cases, the application of life cycle methodologies by companies is considered as private information. So in general, there is also a need for a clearer and unified methodology. Another point is the lack of a comprehensive approach by administration and the absence of a regulatory framework that foresees the application of life cycle methodologies as a concept spread in a wider manner. So despite the also high availability of life cycle at academic and research level, the region noticed very low awareness in companies and administrations, and especially lack of technical specialization. LCA methods are very specific sometimes and limited to the assessment of particular processes. So again, here is a strong need for a broader and comprehensive scope in the application of life cycle thinking. Then we see an absence of long-term criteria for the development of decision-making concerning LCA, a slowness of the bureaucratic process, and this element is one of the most significant weaknesses of LCA4Regions to intervene in the political change, especially for those partners who are not regional authorities. But yeah, taking action is not immediate, but we can of course plant as many seeds as possible. And yeah, in general, there's the risk also for trivialization of LCA methods due to the absence or insufficient information. And yeah, we can go on with opportunities where we see, for example, the data collection seems to be a problem identified, but then it could be an opportunity. So the project has the possibility to prompt the creation of database. National and European trends are seen as opportunities because they both positively affect people's thinking, but also regions will be soon required to apply more changes in favor to environment and resource efficiency. And using the means for subventions and reductions is also interesting to encourage the development and application of LC criteria. Of course, cooperation and between the industrial sector and academics for strategic partnerships that could drive the change and encourage companies to invest. Yes, so the mobilization of local authorities through local channel is also fundamental. And talking about threats, the most significant threat on which all regions agree is the high cost of LCA. And this perception may stakeholders give up, but the responsibility of the project is to change this perception, leveraging on long-term results and environmental and social benefits, providing support and working both on monetary and knowledge-based incentives. Then we see a general presence of small and medium enterprises that could represent an advantage because it can stimulate local economies, but also it is seen mainly as a threat by the region because they often have low economic capacity and low impact. Then we see again a lack of comparability of results that makes this difficult also the interpretation, and overcoming production inertia is a huge trait that a lot of regions remarked. So this is basically the most important factor against which we are going to fight, influencing the changing of the overall business as usual attitude. So communication here is fundamental to spread the importance of applying LCA. And just some strategic remarks. So talking about this current situation in this period of crisis, many uncertainties are have fallen apart, and there is a stronger need for change. So we strongly believe that more than ever, life cycle thinking right now inside decision making is quite essential, quite important. And COVID is something that didn't show up in the regional analysis because it was carried out before this event, but I think we think that at the strategic level is something that must be considered because at least connected to this political inertia, those slow political changes and processes seem to be hard to transform. But yeah, the current situation created by the pandemic can be also, let's say, an opportunity to, because this is clear that a lot of production schemas will be forced to convert in order to jumpstart the region's GDPs and recover socio-economic indicators. So this project can be a mean to drive this recovery phase. A little comment on the cost. It could be a matter of perspective, because the perception of these tools is very expensive, but the emphasis could be put on long-term investments and benefits resulting from the application of life cycle methods. And we could also say that there are many tools which do not require softwares in consulting, but they are choice. So there are more approaches, methodological approaches, and strategic choices that can be taken by regions. So yeah, emerging these common elements emerged by the SWOT can be considered as relevant criteria also for stimulate the transfer of opportunities inside this project. Thank you.
Okay, Deborah, thank you very much for that. Thank you. Okay, right, we're just going to take a couple of brief questions before moving on. And the first question goes to Mikel Erujo. Are you still there, Mikel? Hello?
Yes, hello, I'm here.
Hi, can you switch your video on too?
Yes.
I can hear you.
Yep.
Hi, Mikel. Right, there's a question here. We've been asked for your opinion about the future for the circular economy here in Navarra.
Well, I may say that the future is bright, I will say. I think that for Navarra and for everybody, you know that first of all, I mean, the Green Deal is not only a deal, it's a package of legal measures and also financial measures. This is firstly. Secondly, the recovery plan, and this is very important, the recovery plan announced by the European Commission is linked to each member state to develop a national recovery plan. And these national recovery plans, they must demonstrate that they are going ahead with all the ecological transitions, is what they say. But so Green Deal, to implement the Green Deal will become, for many member states, and especially, I may say, Spain, a clue element in order to get these recovery plan subsidies, who are non-reimbursable grants. I need to say it's not budget. Okay, so but this is like the carrots that we have. As I say, Green Deal is also regulatory, and but also, as I said, I mean, I will insist, it's good because I mean, circular economy is now part of our regional strategy. I will say that in the last 5 years, we have seen a big progress in industry, for instance. I could really say, I mean, when I started in Brussels with the responsibility in my government, that circular economy perhaps was not only Navarra, but was not very well known. And not many industry was participating on it. I mean, I think right now, I mean, we all, including private sector, are saying that is part of the future of the industry, of the investments, of part of what even the clients are demanding. So yes, I see the future right, but mainly I have insisted this in my presentation. It's not because the smart specialization strategy, it's because the smart specialization strategy methodology that obliges you, makes you mandatory to have this open dialogue with every single stakeholder in your region. And I think this is why I'm especially optimistic in Navarra. because every single decision that we are doing, we try to be as much participatory, and this means the openness, and openness usually means better ideas, and when you implemented them, they are better taken by the stakeholders.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you very much. It's a very comprehensive answer. Thank you. Okay, another question, this time to Fritz. Fritz, are you there? Is Fritz with us?
He's with us.
Hi, Fritz. Hello. And your video?
Yeah, it should be online.
Ah, there we go. There we go.
Yeah,
Perfect.
I have flipped my camera. You're quite right. My apologies.
Hello.
Okay,
Yeah.
I have the chat question in front of me here.
Ah, right. Perfect. Okay.
Do you think it's possible to harmonize or unify methodologies? In a way, it's happening already. Through the assessment methodologies standardized through ISO 14040 set of standards. Also, the European Union has a series of standards, for example, PEFs and environmental product declarations. So in many cases, the standardization process and unification of methodologies is taking place, has taken place. The two weakness areas are in data sets, to be able to compare data sets between countries and between regions. There's still some work to be done on that. But in many cases, the regions do not have so much data. Building it up, I think, needs to take into account international initiatives for data standardization. And the other area where the standardization is not so well developed is in life cycle management areas. For the assessment area, it's quite good at the moment. For management area, there are some gaps there that still need to be addressed. So it's work in progress, but it's not such a bad picture right now, I'd say. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And I think for the moment, that's all the questions we have. So we can move on now. Thank you very much, Fritz.
Could I make a point? Just a very quick one.
Please do. Yeah.
A number of the partners have put forward that life cycle assessment LCA is quite expensive, and Deborah has mentioned this as well. And I think she had the right perspective on it. She said the cost of life cycle assessment is a matter of perspective. We should be seeing LCA as an investment, not as a cost. It does bring benefits. We need to very carefully realize what these benefits are in an LCA exercise. And it's an investment in the future. It's not a cost of the past. And we can develop this idea a little bit further in some of the group discussions, if you like. But I just want to emphasize that point. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, we can move on then. Thank you very much, Fritz, for that, that intervention there. Okay, now we're going to pass to our next speaker, the next presentation planned for today, and we're going to hear from Rami Salimdeeb. You're there. Hello. Hi. Rami is an LCA expert on resource efficiency and a chartered resource and waste manager with 6 years experience in resource efficiency and waste management. Rami is currently leading Zero Waste Scotland's work on upgrading the carbon metric, expanding it to cover new environmental indicators. He's also involved in a number of projects that incorporate circular economy thinking and strategies. And we're all particularly looking forward to hearing from him today. So it's with great pleasure I pass him the floor.
Cool. Thanks, David, and thanks for the invite. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. It's really a pleasure to be here talking to you briefly about the carbon metric and the exciting work we have moving forward. So yeah, hopefully, like I would probably not take much time, but then obviously we will have a chance, to answer any questions that you might have. Before I start, and brief introduction about the work we do here at Zero Waste Scotland. So Zero Waste Scotland is funded to support the delivery of the Scottish Government's circular economy strategy. We receive also funding from the EU to support their 2020 growth strategy. So we work across 4 different themes covering key topic areas such as household recycling, food waste, energy efficiency, manufacturing, reuse and repair, and also litter. So all the work we do here at Zero Waste Scotland aims to tackle the issue of climate change and decarbonize the Scottish economy. So this vision has led to the development of the carbon metric in 2013. And since its inception, the carbon metric has been a great way for us to look at waste generated in different perspectives and provide additional insights to policymakers. And what we are really interested here is about the additional insights. So moving to the next slide. Scottish carbon metric measures the whole life carbon impacts of Scotland's waste, from resource extraction and manufacturing emissions right through to waste management emissions, regardless of where in the world these impacts occur. After all, climate change is a global problem, and Fritz mentioned and talked about this and the idea of having the whole life cycle impacts, and this is really key for us here, because unlike many tools and methods that focus on emissions associated with direct waste management activities, the carbon metric includes the whole life cycle impacts, as it's the only way for us to show the substantial environmental benefits associated with waste prevention. And I should actually make it clear here, the carbon metric for us is not a carbon accounting tool, but it's a decision support tool that will help policymakers in taking the environmental impacts into consideration when they work on new policies or strategies, because that's the only way for us to address the issue of climate change. Now I will just present a couple of examples just to show how the carbon metric is used to provide additional insights to decision makers rather than focusing on waste tonnages and recycling rates. So first of all, you might notice that the y-axis in this graph is not shown, and this is because there are a number of data points which are not published yet. But as you can see here, about what we can see here and what we are really interested in is the trend, as you can see. So in spite of fluctuation of waste tonnages, as you can see that blue line, so Scotland has managed to reduce the whole life carbon impacts of waste in the last 7 years. So we've managed to do so by introducing a number of policies and measures such as a landfill ban by 2025, increase in the tonnages of separately collected food waste, and improving the quality of recycling waste streams. Example here focusing on food waste, and this graph shows that substantial carbon savings have been achieved, as you can see here, by diverting food waste from landfill in spite of a slight increase in food waste tonnages. So that's obviously we have this huge reduction in carbon impacts because we have more material, more food waste is recycled compared to landfill, as you can see that slide. So for us, the carbon metric is really exciting and interesting way for us to look at waste and how we manage waste here in Scotland. And we wanted to share our experience and go beyond Scotland, because we've been having this, we've been working on the carbon metric for around 7 years. And as it's like, we're really keen to share, the experience with the rest of the world. And last year we had really a great opportunity to partner with ACR Plus to develop the Carbon Metric International, which is obviously a regional life cycle assessment tool that will help ACR Plus members in delivering their latest campaign, the More Circularity, Less Carbon campaign. So quick introduction about the campaign. So the campaign was launched to help Europe to reach carbon neutrality. And in order to do that, the carbon footprint of EU citizens must decrease from 11 tons to 4 tons per inhabitant in 2030. And ACR Plus and its members will contribute to the global fight against climate change while taking into account the local carbon footprint and existing dynamics. They will build on their key role as public authorities, mobilizing local stakeholders and citizens. So to drive the waste prevention and management and advance the circular economy throughout their jurisdictions in order to reduce carbon impacts. So their goal and the target is quite clear, which is to reduce their emissions linked to local resource management by 25% by 2025. And in order to monitor progress against this target and identify areas with high potential carbon reduction, the Carbon Metric International was born. So when it comes to the tool, the Carbon Metric International we developed this tool in order to have a user-friendly carbon metric tool that can be used by different regions and even cities to estimate the carbon impacts of waste. And the tool for us, it was a really exciting journey, but we had clear criteria that we need to meet because we had Deborah and Praise, they're talking about life cycle assessment and the challenges of using life cycle assessment in such work. So we wanted to make sure that it's a user-friendly tool and should be robust, reliable, and also easy to adapt because the tool will be used by different regions, not just one particular country. So for us, the Carbon Metric International is not like a project to be delivered by us, but we take this opportunity as a partnership. We are working with ACR Plus and their members in a way that we help each other to get to what we really want, which is having that user-friendly dynamic tool that works in all cases. So how does it work? The carbon metric I thought might be useful to give really brief introduction. So it's quite really similar when it comes to the theory behind it, and what we need really is the waste tonnages, and then we need to have carbon factors and then we will be able to estimate the carbon impacts. But when you start looking into the details, it gets a bit more complicated because when it comes to waste, we will have around for example, with the carbon metric, we have 33 different waste categories covering different waste sources, whether it's household or non-household. We're talking about each country, they have their own waste operation activities, and we need to take that into consideration because the carbon factor should be bespoke and it should be region specific. Again, countries have different ways, different recycling technologies and waste disposal, and we need to take that into consideration. And also you have different energy grids with obviously different carbon factors, and that also needs to be taken into consideration, especially when you're talking about the benefits from generating energy by incinerating waste. So that's another key factor there. For us, as I said, the Carbon Metric International is like a project based on partnership. So we split the idea of delivering this project into 4 straightforward steps. So the first 2 steps will be delivered by ACR Plus members, because obviously for us in Scotland, we don't have that sort of local expertise and knowledge when it comes to what waste it's generated there, what is it made from, how it's managed. So they will be working with us to get the data we need in the first 2 steps. And the second stage for us, step 3 and 4, it will be Zero Waste Scotland, and we will use our expertise in this area to estimate the different regions' bespoke carbon factors that we can then use to try to quantify the overall carbon impacts. How long will it take? Our idea in the first place was about 4-month journey, but obviously with COVID-19 that situation has changed, but we are hoping to have some results published hopefully next month or in a couple of months, and we would be very delighted to share with you the results moving forward. So yeah, so the Carbon Metric International and the idea of developing these regional dynamic user-friendly tools, it sounds really simple, but actually there's a huge work that needs to be done in this area, because to make that tool easy to be used by other people, it's not that straightforward. So we spend quite a lot of time trying to develop a set of tools, guidance documents, and tutorials in order to make it easy for our partners at ACR Plus to collect the data that we need, because it's yeah, and as you can see here in both the first and the second steps, we produce a number of tools and guidance documents in order to support ACR Plus members in delivering the first two steps. And I will talk later on about why we did this. Yeah, so here it's about why we've done that way and why we are taking this approach when it comes to the carbon metric internationals, because it's been so far, it's a pilot project and we've learned quite a lot. And the first thing we've realized, which obviously mentioned in Deborah's presentation, about the limitation of LCA. Like, carbon assessment is a really time consuming and resource intensive project, and in order to have a sustainable project, we need to make sure that we plan it and deliver it in a way that reduce the cost for all parties, whether Zero Waste Scotland, ACR Plus, or their members. The second issue is the paucity of data is one of the key challenges facing the development of environmental indicators, and this is like a challenge that's not really faced by us in the waste industry, in the resource and waste industry, but across all industries and those who are working with LCA. Again, it's about the methodologies, LCA methodologies. So there are a number of methodologies. So standardization is really important for us, especially if you wanna start looking at benchmark and you wanna try to see how countries are performing against each other. So standardization is really key at this stage. And finally, when it comes to LCA, it's obviously an evolving area of science, and that's why it's really key to invite LCA practitioners and the LCA community to get involved. And it's nice to have Fritz here and to get his insights on these things. So it's an evolving area, and we should always be up to date, and we should always keep in touch with the LCA community. So these are what I think key limitations you probably will face when it comes to developing regional life cycle assessment tools. But when it comes to that solution and the way forward, because obviously we always try to come up with ways to address these issues, the key thing is collaboration. So I think that's the ultimate way in order to address all the challenges that I've just mentioned. With collaboration, you don't really need to reinvent the wheel, but rather build on the success of other partners. So we at Zero Waste Scotland, we've been working with the carbon metric for 7 years. So like someone like, let's say, in Spain or Italy, or like, they don't really need to reinvent. We will be more than happy to share our expertise in this area. And it's also about reducing the cost, because obviously we already have a number of sources and tools that can be applied again in different regions. So reducing the cost is another really big advantage of collaboration. And it's about also increasing transparency and promoting standardization, because you will be using a similar approach and similar method when you quantify the carbon impacts. And finally, it's about providing additional insights such as benchmarking, because you will be using the same methodology. Then you will be able to compare different regions and different technologies. So so I think the way forward for us and for anyone who's thinking about designing original LCA tools is to collaborate, to work with each other in these areas. And I'm sure like this project is one of the key goals of this project is to build that bridge, as Sandra mentioned in his presentation in the first place. So I've been talking about the carbon so far, but also we at Zero Waste Scotland here, we are really excited about also going beyond carbon, because we've realized that the carbon impacts don't really reflect the actual environmental cost of waste and materials. And I'll show you just an example here looking at plastics. So we have like plastics which are made from fossil-based plastics, and also we have bio-based plastics which made from plants. So obviously, it's not surprising news to know that the bio-based plastics have lower carbon impacts compared to fossil-based conventional plastics. But we have a different story to tell when it comes to land use change, for example, because with bio-based plastics, you need land to grow the crops and also water footprint. So then you will have different story when you look at other factors. So our next journey is to start looking beyond carbon and explore the different impacts across different parameters. So yeah, for example, this is we just wanna have that sort of holistic environmental assessment of materials and products, looking at different key indicators, whether it's carbon, air quality, land, water, and materials. So yeah, it's a really exciting journey. We've just started with this, and we'll be more than happy to share with you more exciting news about this project as we move on. And yeah, that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Remy. Thank you very much indeed. That was fascinating. Right, let's move on to the second question and answer session. I have a couple of questions here that my colleagues have passed across. The first one is actually to Mikel Irujo again. Are you there, Mikel? Mikel with us? No, he may have popped out. No, okay. Well, I'll pass. I'll try to come back to Mikel in a moment. But I'm going to address this question, which Rami, you may have seen in the chat yourself, but I'll say it aloud, which is, what do you think about the SUP directive, the Single-Use Plastic Directive? Do you believe it's going in the right direction, or is it not sufficient to go to a lower carbon target?
Well, it's when it comes to the single-use, SUB, I think it's going up in the right direction. Especially, we do acknowledge the issue of single-use plastics, and for us, when it comes. But before I start talking about this, I think we need to make it clear that there is no good or bad materials, but there is good or bad applications of materials. So we're not against plastic, but we just want to make sure the right material is used in the right product at the right time. So we always, for us, the ultimate journey is about prevention, about reducing material use. It's because, and if there is any time, there is a way to reduce plastic. So that's the way forward. And it's good to see that the EU has introduced ban on a number of single-use plastic products. And so carbon is obviously a really good way to look at the benefits of such, policies. But as I, shown in that example, when I'm talking about bio-based plastics, then also you need to consider the other, impacts of maybe switching from fossil-based plastics to bio-based plastics. You just need to keep it in mind, and the tool we have here is basically main goal here is to help decision makers to have that sort of holistic understanding of the issue. So we're not trying to give like a specific answer. So we're just trying to help them to have that sort of informed decision.
Excellent, thank you.
Nice.
Vale. Okay. Yes, there's a second question here from David Sotillo about the carbon calculation. And the question is it a complete new tool based on your own collection of regional data, or are they based or related to EPA or CTIP methodologies?
Yeah, well, it's our carbon is based on the life cycle assessment approach. So we are trying our best to follow the ISO for standards when it comes to LCA. We use a lot of data from different sources. Probably you came across, there are a number of life cycle inventory data sets which are online. Obviously, like some of them, you have to pay for them to get access to. Luckily, we have that access. So we have access to the life cycle inventory data, and we use it to create our own bespoke factors. So yeah, we do follow the LCA guidance, which is the ISO standards, and also what we do, we try our best to take into consideration the local conditions of the waste industry and how waste is managed in Scotland. So this is another key element of LCA. So yes.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. I try to go back to, yes, the question for Mikael, if he's there. Are you there? Are you still with us, Mikael?
Yes, I am.
Perfect. Okay. Yes, we had a question here, which is whether you think strategies for promoting LCA methodologies in the public and private sector are going to be promoted by the government.
Or government of Navarra, I guess.
Yes, yes, we must assume so, yes.
Well, it's a pity, of course. I mean, Pablo Muñoz, who is the director of environment, will answer much better than me this question. But anyhow, I mean, I think the commitment, as I said, of leading, for instance, this Interreg Europe project is not only about one department, it's about the government. As I said, I mean, it's part of our common strategy, and it's already included in roadmap for climate change. It's included in the circular economy agenda that we drafted last year. It's also much more developed even in a proposal of law that we are now debating in our regional parliament on climate change and energy transition, in which it really refers different articles to circular economy and etc. So yes, I mean, our commitment is to be introduced and developed, and the most challenging, you know, it's how to convince the industry. And in these regards, I mean, already was answering that we have seen a strong movement on that. So part of the partners of this project is the Association of the Industry of Navarra. So I think really this shows also the commitment of several industrial associations, and hopefully, of course, and we are sure of that, of many particular industry about, I mean, the development of this. As you know, I mean, this is not something, I think the debate comes from the European Union itself. This is not only, of course, I mean, this is about the development goals, this is about sustainability, this is about our future, the future of the next generation, but this is also about the competitiveness of Europe itself. We have lost the prices of the war of prices, for instance. We are losing in certain aspects the commercial war on quality, because Asia is improving quality enormously. So one of our seals as Europeans is the green one. So you must take into account that, and this is a clear message from many industrial associations in Brussels. So this is not only about sustainability concern. This is also about a commercial issue that Europe it's the strongest continent in the world on this green seal, we could say. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, I don't think we have any more questions for the moment, unless anybody would like to make any comment from the panelists. We can pass, I think, directly to the closing poll. Okay, the poll, and you can see here in huge letters in the center, sustainability is the concept that's most mentioned by everybody, the importance of using resources in a sustainable way, you know, planning and preparing for the future in a holistic way, thinking also not short term, but about long-term benefits, a sustainable future, as Remy mentioned, you know, for our children and future generations. Also the management of waste, the circular economy, strategic management, collaboration. Again, Remy really underlined this in his presentation, the importance of collaboration, right? And transparency in terms of data and communication and investment and so on. Okay, so you can see that's really, really interesting. But the key word, obviously, in the center is sustainability. Okay, well, thank you very much indeed to all of the speakers today. I'm just going to make a brief introduction to the following 2 days. Tomorrow, of course, we'll be learning about good practices. Hello, Deborah, you Okay, hi. Yeah, about LCA good practices, taking inspiration from the experiences of the different partner regions on the topic of resource efficiency, and drawing on some good practice examples that everybody, the different partner regions have ready to exchange, and from which we hope to take inspiration for future regional action plans. Okay, and then I'll just say now, as I didn't say much in detail at the beginning, on Thursday, our last day, we'll be making 2 virtual study visits. Again, you know, in the current environment, it would have been lovely to invite you all here and have you visit these places, but we're going to do it virtually. Forge on ahead with the project, and we're going to visit Agralco, a company dedicated to transforming and valorizing byproducts in the production of wine, and also Biosasun, who use olive trees to make high quality, ecologically produced olive oil and related products, polyphenol-rich health products. And both companies will explain how they work on resource efficiency, and sharing their experiences of contributing to policy changes, to the debate, and explaining how the use of LCA has helped them in decision making. And this final session, as I say, will conclude with a roundtable peer-to-peer review on good practices led by our project lead here in Navarra, Raul Salanueva, and with the contribution too of our external experts. Okay, just a couple of other things. Remember, all of you can follow the project activities on the webpage, and find us via the webpage on Twitter. And I think Irene is going to post, just as a reminder, the webpage address in the chat while we're here. But obviously, you already know what it is. Okay. And follow the activities on Twitter if you haven't already done so. Okay. And also, Sandra asked me to remind you too that we'll produce a document summary of the whole of each day's proceedings and make them available for download from the web page. Okay, so that's all for today. Thank you very much to all of our speakers. It's been very informative, very, very, very interesting indeed. And thank you for your attendance, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And goodbye.
Okay.